The secret to saving money isn't budgeting, it is self-esteem. Think about it. After a stressful day, you're scrolling, you're clicking add to cart, and for a moment, it almost feels like everything is okay again until it isn't, and you get the urge to spend again. The cycle of spending isn't about being bad with money, it's about how you see yourself. And research shows that people with higher self-esteem don't feel the need to prove their worth, and as a result, save a lot more. My name is Sim, and in this episode, we'll be diving into why compulsive shopping happens, how it connects to self-esteem, and more importantly, the steps you can take to break free and start saving with a lot more confidence and science behind what you do. The best place to start is to understand what compulsive shopping is, and a study called The Role of Self-Esteem and Fear of Negative Evaluation in Compulsive Buying was a really interesting study that I ended up reading, and I'm kind of basing this entire episode around. Compulsive shopping, to really break it down in simple terms, is the dysfunctional form of excessive buying, and basically you experience a unstopped, chronic, and repeated impulse to go shopping and to spend money. You are no way, shape, or form lazy or stupid or uneducated. And it's not a case of lacking self-control. And in this episode, I want to make it clear that there is a spectrum when it comes to compulsive shopping. And there's people that are going to get a lot more value from a professional licensed therapist versus the people that are on the almost other side of the end where self-help can be useful. And it's that end that this entire episode is going to be helpful for, because at the end of the day, I can read a research study, but I am not a therapist. So to start off, what are some signs that you would look out for if you are worried about how you spend money, or if there's someone in your life that you may be a bit concerned about? There's a couple of signs to look out for when you're thinking about yourself. It's things like feeling an intense urge to shop or to spend money even when you cannot afford it. It looks like lying to your loved ones about your spending habits, or feeling guilty or ashamed after you go shopping. We all experience these things little by little, but it's more of a spectrum. Like I was saying, you might feel guilty or ashamed about shopping every now and again, but if you're feeling that every single time, coupled with all these other feelings that you get, these are when it becomes more of a concern. Other things can be like your mood improving as soon as you make a purchase, but then having it deteriorate right after. Very similar to like dietary issues or issues around eating habits, where you feel great when you eat a piece of cake and then you feel terrible afterwards. You know, that's not a healthy relationship with food, in the same way that it's not a healthy relationship with shopping. Another sign is returning items you've bought quite often and having a house full of things you don't need, or feeling quite cluttered. And if you're listening to this and going, okay, Sim, I hear you, but what about someone that I'm worried about? What would be the signs that I would look for in them? I mean, I don't know if they feel guilty or ashamed after shopping, or if their mood improves. And the signs are slightly different. It usually looks like someone buying expensive items or spending more money than they can afford, maybe talking about shopping or making purchases that they don't need. Maybe it looks like them hiding receipts or lying about what they've bought, or being secretive with their finances, or constantly asking you for money to pay for purchases. As you can understand, someone that feels really worried about their spending habits often are very self-critical. There is a lot of guilt. There is a lot of personal suffering, and it's not a fun place to be whatsoever. And again, we're really focusing on the more mild side of compulsive shopping, and on the side where, again, self-help can be useful, because when we get into the nitty-gritty, some of these things are more deep-rooted than, what you could learn about in one podcast episode. One of the interesting things, however, is when I was looking into who suffers from this the most, if I was to ask you, like, who do you think is more likely to be a compulsive shopper? What do they look like? What do they wear? What do they appear to be? And, a lot of old school reports suggested that women were more likely to be compulsive buyers. I saw this one report that suggested that 90% of all compulsive buyers are women. But more recent studies in the last couple of decades have showed such a different conclusion. And they found that, gender doesn't actually play much of a role when it comes to being a compulsive shopper or a compulsive buyer. What gender or gender norms tends to influence is the things people buy, but not necessarily the amount that they are buying. And they found that men tend to impulsively buy instrumental and leisure items that are associated with independence and activity. So think fancy car, think boys' toys, boats, those sort of things. Whereas women tend to purchase things that are more symbolic in terms of appearance. And so you can imagine clothes, jewelry, bags, makeup. And either way, there's no right or wrong. Either way, what men on average tend to buy and what women on average tend to buy when it comes to impulsive shopping is that their motivation is the exact same. The motivation is to impress others. So let that just sit with you for a moment. The reason why you might be feeling the desire to compulsive shop is actually less to do with yourself and more in how you appear to other people. So that's something to hold on to. And we're going to put a pin in that thought because it kind of leads on to the next chapter of this episode, which is why do people compulsively shop? And there's a few reasons, but it's primarily motivated to relieve anxiety, to relieve stress, just to get rid of unpleasant emotions. And oftentimes these emotions like anxiety, stress, unpleasant feelings, feeling worried, feeling overwhelmed, these emotions can temporarily be relieved when you go shopping. And that's essentially where the idea of retail therapy comes from. We joke about it. I've definitely joked about it a lot. Like, oh, it's been rough, such a rough day. I'm just going to go do some retail therapy. But there's actually some science behind it to prove that for a short period of time, this gives us a dopamine hit. The neurotransmitter dopamine is released in your brain when you buy something. It makes you feel good. You get an enjoyment from the experience. But interestingly enough, it's not the enjoyment that you get from the item itself. The item itself kind of dwindles down and you kind of go back to your, usual state on the hedonic treadmill. You get like a high, like you buy a new phone, you're like, oh my God, it's so shiny and I love the packaging and I'm going to choose my new wallpaper and it's going to feel so good. And you're like, you're very careful about where you place your phone and then give it 6 months or give it a year and your phone just, it's broken. There's a chip on it. The screen isn't always working. And there's just a lot of reasons that you look and go, oh my God, I treat this thing very differently from when I started. But then you want to change to the new phone. You want the new thing again. You want to buy a case. You want to update. You're like, well, maybe my laptop could get updated because again, with dopamine, it's the experience of buying something that makes you feel good. And again, on this podcast, we don't share just our thoughts and opinions. We always want to look at the facts. We always want to look at the science because at the end of the day, if something can be proved repeatedly and it can be proved with evidence and it can be discussed and it can have peer review, like that is a good place to start when it comes to understanding a topic. And so a 2008 study by Ertel found that impulsive buyers suffered from low self-esteem and they would seek approval from others to compensate for said low self-esteem. And that kind of makes sense. Like if you are shopping and you can find a way to improve your appearance, you could find a way to dress better, then maybe your self-confidence will increase. Maybe your social relationships will increase. And in our culture, we really have this belief. I say culture, but I really do feel it is apparent no matter where in the world you are. You could be in India, you could be in the UK, you could be in Australia, you could be anywhere. And we really have bought into this idea that through capitalism, self-esteem and well-being can be purchased. You're not feeling good? Go buy a matcha. You're not feeling good? Pay for a Pilates class. You're not feeling good? Go shop and buy a new outfit. Maybe it's time to get that haircut. A lot of the ideas around treating yourself are very closely linked with spending money, having a spa day, getting a massage, buying a million bubble bath products. If you've ever kind of found yourself down a TikTok rabbit hole, there's these videos where people showcase like these elaborate self-care routines and, having 20 different products that they put on their face for their skincare or, buying all these different things that they will use in a shower for an everything shower. And they're not going to lie, they're quite enjoyable videos. Like as someone that is a minimalist, I can kind of get behind just watching a girl get some like incredible looking, thick cream. And okay, this is not sounding very good. This is not sounding very good at all. I take that back. But what I'm trying to say, down the TikTok rabbit hole that I went through, you just end up seeing how very normal and natural we have associated well-being and self-esteem is something that you can buy. And so we will do it if we feel overwhelmed, if we don't feel like we're good enough. It is so easy to spend money to fix that feeling. Like, rather than trying to deal with the feeling, we go, well, do I want to sit with it and understand why I don't feel that I'm a very attractive person, or that, I'm not really getting the attention that I want? Or should I go off and get a haircut, get my nails done, buy a new outfit, buy some other like really cute little thing that makes me feel good, and I can kind of like quieten the noise of, am I good enough? Instead of going, why am I worried about what other people think of me? And, their opinions shouldn't have a significant impact on how I view myself. It is so much easier to go, well, if I have signs of status on me, like I have a fancy bracelet, or I have a ring that measures my health, or I have, clothes that are from fancy brands that can be seen, the logo is on them, that maybe these people know that I belong, and I don't have to stress anymore about that. Temporarily, they think I'm one of them. It's a lot easier, as you can see, which kind of action to take. One is a quick fix, and one takes a lot of like soul searching and deep unrooting of beliefs that you've had from probably a very young age, which then leads us to the next chapter, which is, how do you stop this? How do you deal with something like this? And I have a theory, and I could totally be wrong, but I really have a strong theory that if you want to stop spending lots of money on things that you do not need, it is going to be a lot easier to get there if you start worrying about how you are perceived. And the only person's opinion you care about is yourself. Within reason. Look, we're not trying to break the law. We're not trying to like hurt people and be like, I do not care how they feel about me. Like, I'm going to be just a terrible person. That's probably a little bit too far from where I'm trying to come from. But the relationship between compulsive shopping and the fear of negative evaluation was studied, and it was really, really interesting. What they found is the fear of negative evaluation, which also can be considered just the fear of someone looking at you and going, yeah, not a good person, don't like her, she's a terrible, young lady. That's a fear that a lot of people can have, especially women. We are incredibly more likely to engage in social comparison. And so in the sense, we are very much likely to base our self-esteem on the judgment of others. And so there is a strong relationship between the fear of negative evaluation, short formed for FNE, but that just does not work for my brain, so I'm just going to call it the fear of evaluation, and compulsive buying. There's a strong relationship. And so the study tried to figure out, well, how did they relate to each other? And they found that the fear of negative evaluation is actually such a strong part of someone's self-esteem. If you are incredibly worried, if you have a higher level of fear of negative evaluation, if you are more aware and sensitive to how people perceive you, not only does it affect your spending, but it's actually a strong risk factor for almost a whole cocktail of issues. Having a high level of fear of negative evaluation means that you are probably more likely to have social anxiety. You are probably more likely to have eating disorders. You are probably more likely to have worse relationships with money, and the list continues. And so part of the steps that you can take, which kind of lead us into the last chapter, what can we do about this? How can we deal with this? Is understanding this idea, the way that we can fix our relationship with money is actually fixing our relationship with ourselves. And again, it kind of depends on the two groups that you could fall into. If you have a very mild stage of compulsive shopping, then you can resolve it by focusing on actions and activities that improve your confidence and creating a barrier between you and your purchases. And we can absolutely run through those now. But if you have a serious compulsive shopping disorder, and that's something that you can have managed, it can lead to having a healthy and happy and fulfilling life. A lot of people do go through therapy to reach that other side, but that probably requires, speaking with a trained professional, which I am not, that can actually guide you And they'll usually have like a combination of different addiction therapies, maybe CBT, see, I can't even say it, so don't trust me, cognitive behavioral therapy or group therapy or individual counseling. And these are going to help you understand and overcome the underlying causes of, it's almost a form of addiction if you really think about it. But back to the more milder side, in that case, there are definitely things that we can do. And I want to run through them because if you can take action, then you're going to be able to be in a much better place. And you're essentially doing the work that is required to deal with the underlying desire of, getting that quick hit, fixing that dopamine issue, if you may. And so the skills that you can take, the sort of tools that you can put in your toolkit are broken down into your confidence levels and creating a barrier or like a restriction between you and purchases. And the first half of it is essentially learning to love yourself. Like, believe it or not, it sounds so cringe and gross and like, Sim, come on, like, this is a financial podcast. I want to learn about financial strategies. I want like peer-reviewed, scientific-based things. I don't want you to like tell me to love myself. That is like, I know that's not new information, but I really genuinely have found, even in my own personal life, a strong relationship between the less I worry about how I am looking and being perceived to other people, the just less money I feel I need to spend. Like, I don't feel the need to dress up if I go somewhere because I don't necessarily care if people think I have money or not, or I don't necessarily care if people think I am a valued member of society or not. I know I am. I would like to think I'm a good person. I treat my friends and family well. I try really hard in my career. I take care of people around me. And I'd like to think that that's enough to like be somewhat of a good person. And so as a result, if I go somewhere, and I'm not immune to this feeling, but if I go somewhere and I feel I am being looked up and down, or I feel like I'm being judged, or I feel like these people don't think I belong here, I have learned to like create a level of like Teflon outside of my body. And so if someone sends a negative vibe my way or even says something about me not belonging somewhere, like it just rolls off me like Teflon. Because I have now such a strong sense of self that I don't need to buy things to look a certain way to appear like I have more wealth. And that's been definitely like something I have had to learn and grow with over time. And there will be still times where I go, oh, maybe I should dress up for this so people take me more seriously. And in some instances, it kind of needs to help. And especially if I'm like going on a job interview, like it helps to be, presented better. But that's been my experience. And other ways that I've been able to improve my self-confidence and improve my relationship with myself is essentially taking on new skills. When I try something that I'm not good at, like I'm trying to learn tennis, I am terrible at tennis. I have no idea why I have done this. But my fiance and I are learning tennis. It kind of helps that he also is not very good at tennis and we're just kind of learning together. But when you take on a new skill, you start to do more of it. You're like, oh, I'm actually getting better at this. And I like that about myself. I'm learning how to do embroidery and I'm loving it. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting better at this. And when you try something you're not good at and you start to get better at it, you just naturally feel more confident. The second thing that I've been doing is looking after my health, moving my body, nourishing my body, doing things that make my body feel good. Like, your body is just a vessel, right? Like, it's just a lot of like skin and flesh, and it's not a representation of who you are as a person, and it doesn't like showcase your value to the world. But when I move my body and I feed it well and I take care of it and I put it to bed and I just look after it, I naturally feel more better. And it doesn't matter what clothes I put on my body or what jewelry I put on my body or what handbag my body is holding. If I feel strong, then I feel good. And if I feel well fed, then I feel good and I have energy. That's like 80% of the battle for me. I can put on, a boring pair of jeans and a black t-shirt, which is actually what I wear like 95% of the time. And I'm happy with that because the clothes don't make the fit. It's, my confidence in myself and standing up tall and being proud of my body. The third thing that I found that actually really helps is removing negative stimuli that leads to comparison, that leads to self-doubt. And I've probably been very lucky in the sense that I've grown up with a family that didn't really talk about our appearance, our physical appearance that much. Did they? Maybe not our like face. No one was ever like, oh, Sim, you should probably put on some makeup, or like, oh, you've got a bit of a pimple. Like maybe you should, buy some more skincare. My parents would never talk about their own appearance. Like I never grew up with my mum saying like, oh my God, look at these wrinkles. I should get Botox, or oh my God, like I just need to do this or that. Like there was just no negative stimuli around me that caused me to have in my own head like a strong negative voice. Whereas I know for some friends that I have made or some people I went to school with, their mums would tell them like, oh my God, you're leaving the house, put on some makeup, look presentable. And it was almost as if it was their duty to look good to other people. And that is never a woman's duty. It's not like what's that saying? Beauty is not like a rent that you have to pay to exist in this world. Like just you are allowed to be yourself and there's no need for that stimulus. And a lot of that is also being very mindful of who you follow on social media and how they speak about themselves and how they treat their bodies and what they are doing to, is all of their self-worth based on their appearance? And is that going to make you think about your appearance? Or do you follow creators or people or friends or accounts where their self-worth is not tied to how they look and is tied to the things they are learning, the books they are reading, the ways that they are developing as a human being, as a soul? That can create a completely different reaction in your mind if you're consuming that every single day. So the first half of improving your relationship with money is growing that confidence. But that's not the only part. You can be the most confident person in the world, but if you live next door to, I don't know, a Sephora, like God help us all, it would be impossible to not spend money. And so there's that side, but then there's also the other side, the other half, which is creating a barrier between you and those purchases. One thing that has worked incredibly well for me is giving myself 48 hours between me and a purchase. I remember I went shopping with some friends. We were in another city. We were on holiday. And I looked at these shoes and they were really nice shoes. Just a pair of white sneakers. I didn't own a pair of white sneakers. And I was like, oh, these are really nice. And then they were like $120. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to just buy it. And I was like, okay, cool. Maybe like back in Auckland, like where I live, I will come back and buy them and have a think about it. I remember both my friends being like confused. They were like, why wouldn't you just buy it now? Like you like the shoes. And I had to explain to them, like, I can't just buy something because if I see something and buy something, what would stop me? And so by giving myself 48 hours, by the time I got back home to my city, like 2 or 3 days later, I didn't think about those shoes. And so I realized they weren't that important to me, and I saved myself, $120 and saved myself this fake dopamine hit that wasn't going to last. I also think another way to create a barrier is asking yourself, would I buy this if no one else could see this? And I think about that a lot because that's helped me so much with some of the purchases. There's been some things that I've bought. I'm just looking around my living room, and a lot of the things in this house are very, I just want to say like general, boring, like I don't need people to see what's here. It's not a necessarily fancy living room and there's not necessarily fancy things. But if I had people around all the time and felt very self-conscious of my home, I wonder if that would cause me to like maybe not have a secondhand couch, maybe have a nicer brand new couch, or maybe it would cause me to have a bigger TV because I'm like, oh my God, do people think I'm poor? There's so many ways that you can reduce your spending, but I just love asking myself, like, if no one else could see this, would I buy it? Or would I just go for something that suits me and serves me and is good enough for me? Because, I don't necessarily need to have the nicest things. That's at least what I tell myself. Obviously, much harder to do in practice. And the third thing that I have found incredibly helpful is deleting shopping apps off my phone. I didn't look into the data for this, but I would bet money that there is a strong link between having shopping apps on your phone and buying from those shopping apps versus only online shopping if you open up your laptop or do it through like a Safari or Chrome browser. It's like it's form of separation. But when you have a shopping app, you're seeing it, it's reminding you of it. If you have notifications on, like for sales, like God forbid, it just, good luck. It's so difficult not to go, oh my God, like 30% off and it's a sale and it's only for people that have the app. Like I should probably buy something. I'm due. And so if you think about it, increasing your self-confidence and your self-worth, and not just doing it by like looking in front of the mirror and saying, I love you 5 times. Like I cannot get behind that, but it's doing actual practical things like taking on new skills, looking after your health, moving your body, feeding your body well, removing negative stimulus or stimuli that leads to comparison. And then also setting up a barrier between you and purchases, like giving yourself 48 hours, not buying something if, asking yourself if you'll buy something if no one else could see it, and deleting shopping apps off your phone. These are real, concrete, helpful steps that will make maybe not the complete difference, but at least some difference in your journey if you are finding that you are starting to spend more. And sometimes if you notice like, hey, my spending is getting a little bit out of hand, I'm trying these skills, but they're just not working. Sometimes that does require a conversation with yourself where you go, hey, maybe it's time to get some therapy. Maybe it's time. Imagine if I had like a BetterHelp ad. This would have been such a great place to put it. But imagine that I had time to actually go to therapy and figure out what I needed. And sometimes the answer is less to do with the spending. And it's not that I'm like this crazy person that just like goes blind and takes my card and just like goes into a frenzy. Sometimes I'm running from something and I'm trying to avoid feeling something, and I'm trying to distract myself from, a different, deeper issue in my life. Maybe it's more personal, maybe it's work related, maybe it's, feeling unfulfilled. There's so many other reasons why we cope with a phone addiction or a shopping addiction or a, food addiction. There's all these deeper rooted meanings and feelings involved. And so with that, I hope you look after yourself. I hope you have found this episode helpful. I hope it has been of some use. And if you did enjoy it, please subscribe to our YouTube, leave a comment below. I read every single comment. And the best thing that you can do for me is to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit from it without offending them, of course. Because the best thing that we can do is share this so that more people can get financially literate, so that more people have financial choices. And, what could we ask for? What more could we want to see in the world? So with that, I'll see you next week.